The sun over Solana was merciless, the kind that peeled skin from bone and bleached the wooden signs of dying saloons. Wind carried dust like whispers, dry, hot, and sharp as regret. And on that courthouse square, in front of a crooked wooden stage and a half-interested crowd, Clara Navarro felt her soul fracture in silence. They were selling her baby sister. Luz stood trembling on the auction block, a smudge of sweat and tears streaking her cheek. The girl clutched a tattered shawl like it was armor, eyes darting through the crowd. Desperate to find her sisters, desperate to not be alone, Clara tried to push forward, but the sheriff's deputies held her back, firm and impassive. "This ain't right," she shouted, her voice raw. "We paid what we could." "Your daddy's debts went beyond money," the sheriff muttered, not meeting her eyes. Beside her, Rosa stood frozen, jaw clenched so tight it made her head shake. The three of them had been dragged to Solana after the bank called in the last of their father's loans. He died owing half the county and leaving behind nothing but a broken-down store and 3 daughters with no legal rights to property or themselves. The auctioneer cleared his throat and banged the gavel. Next up, Luz Navarro, 18, strong for her size, good with housework, so I hear. His tone was as dry as the air. Bidding starts at $20. Clara's stomach turned. 30, came a voice. 50. The numbers came fast now. The bidders were familiar faces, old men who drank their dinner, merchants who saw girls as labor, ranchers known for worse. Clara felt panic rise like bile. 80. "Sold," the auctioneer barked, slamming the gavel. "No," Clara cried, lunging forward. The deputies blocked her again, harder this time. Luz whimpered as the buyer, a man with rotting teeth and a slow, awful grin, stepped toward the stage. Then a new voice cut through the dust. "In gold." Silence rippled like lightning across the square. All eyes turned. A man on horseback approached from the alley's edge, tall in the saddle, coat still dark and crisp despite the trail dust clinging to everything else. His wide-brimmed hat shaded a face hard to read, bronze skin, unshaven jaw, and eyes like a coming storm. 150, he said, dismounting with the ease of someone born to the saddle. His spurs clicked as he walked forward for the girl. The auctioneer blinked. "She's already been sold, sir." Then sell her again. "That's not how this." 200. The buyer, tobacco man, stepped up, puffed out his chest. "Now see here." 300. "Goddamn it." 4. For all 3 Navarro girls. The man's voice never rose, it didn't have to. It settled on the square like thunder before rain. "Or I'll take my offer elsewhere, along with a few ears in this town who might care about trafficking women across county lines." The gavel hovered in the air, then lowered slowly. "You got names?" the auctioneer asked weakly. "Rosa, Clara," the man said, eyes scanning each of them in turn. They stayed together. "And your name, mister?" "Owner of La Esperanza." Clara stared at him, stunned. Sam tossed a leather pouch to the stage. It hit with a thud and the unmistakable clink of heavy coins. The sheriff peeked and nodded once and gestured for the deputies to back off. Luz ran from the stage and threw herself into Clara's arms. Rosa followed, shielding them both with her arms. The 3 of them knelt together in the dirt, arms locked tight. "Why," Clara began, looking up at the stranger, "why would you do this?" Sam didn't answer right away. He just looked at them with a gaze that seemed to take in more than he let on. "Because some things you don't let happen twice," he said finally. "Pack your things. We leave in 20 minutes." They rode out of Solana as the sun began to dip, a slow orange bleeding across the horizon. Clara sat tall in the saddle Sam had provided, her sisters close behind in a wagon driven by his man Jasper. No one spoke. The rhythm of hooves and wheels hummed like a lullaby in a nightmare. By the time the town had vanished behind the hills, Clara found her voice. "You don't even know us." "I know enough." "You buying us don't mean we owe you." Sam said simply. "You expect gratitude. I expect nothing." She stared at him. That was worse somehow, like he was too good to be real, like it had to be a trick. "You're not like most men." "No," Sam said, "and neither are you." They rode in silence after that, but Clara kept her eyes on him. She wasn't ready to trust him. Not yet. But something about the way he rode ahead, not turning, not checking to see if they followed, told her he didn't need trust. He just needed time. And maybe he'd earned it. Sold to the man in the hat with a voice like thunder and a fist full of gold. The horses moved at a steady pace through the dusty trail that cut across New Mexico's high desert, wheels of the wagon creaking softly behind. Clara rode beside Sam Delgado in silence, her jaw tight, her eyes scanning the horizon, not out of curiosity but calculation. She was trying to figure him out. The man hadn't said much since they left Solana. No demands, no conditions. Just gave orders like a man who didn't need anyone's permission. He had paid more for her and her sisters than most people paid for land. And that made Clara nervous. She didn't believe in charity. Not here. Not in a place where women were sold like livestock and lawmen looked the other way. Men didn't do good things without asking something in return. At least not the kind of men she knew. Sam Delgado was a riddle wrapped in dust and silence. He rode tall in the saddle, one hand loose on the reins, the other resting near the revolver at his hip, not touching it, just close enough. His black coat flapped slightly with the wind, and his eyes, dark, unreadable, never seemed to rest. Behind them, Rosa sat upright in the wagon, clutching Luz's hand. Luz leaned against her shoulder, exhausted. The girl hadn't said a word since they left town. Clara didn't blame her. They'd been stripped, judged, and auctioned off like cattle. Dignity didn't come easy after that. She turned her eyes to Sam again. "You gonna tell us where we're going?" "La Esperanza," he said without looking. "And that is?" "My ranch, north of the Jornada Hills, about 20 miles from here." "What happens when we get there?" "You'll rest, eat. After that we'll talk." "You mean you'll talk?" she muttered. Sam gave her a sideways glance, then turned his gaze forward again. "You got questions. That's fair. But not all questions get answers right away." "That so?" "It is." Clara bit her tongue. She wasn't used to being talked down to, but something about his tone wasn't arrogant, it was firm, patient. Like he knew she'd push and was waiting for her to stop swinging. "I didn't ask for this," she said after a long stretch of silence. "I know. Neither did my sisters. I know that too." "Eaten." Sam was quiet for a beat, because you were about to be scattered like dust, and some things shouldn't be broken if they can be helped. Clara looked at him harder. "You some kind of preacher?" He gave a small, dry chuckle. "No, just a man who's seen what happens when people stop giving a damn." She didn't respond, not right away, because that answer hit something raw in her, something she didn't want to name. By the time they reached the rocky ridge above a shallow canyon, the sun was bleeding orange across the sky. Below, nestled between the hills, was a modest homestead, whitewashed house with a wide porch, 2 cabins off to the side, a big red barn, and fenced-in pastures dotted with horses. Luz stirred in the wagon behind them. "Is that it?" "La Esperanza." "Hope." Clara hated how much the name made her throat tighten. As they descended into the valley, a woman stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. Gray-haired, broad-hipped, eyes sharp as a hawk. She smiled wide and came down the steps before the wagon stopped. "Thank the saints you're back safe," she said to Sam. Then she looked at the sisters. "You must be the Navarro girls. I'm Martha. Come inside. Supper's still warm." Clara eyed her carefully. There was no trace of pity in the woman's face. No judgment either. Just welcome. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Inside, the house was clean and cool, the scent of baked bread and soap lingering in the air. Martha ushered Luz and Rosa toward a wash basin and a spare room while Sam nodded toward Clara. "Stay," he said, "we need words." Clara crossed her arms. "Do I have a choice?" "You always have a choice." That stopped her. She followed him into what looked like a study, books lining the walls, a heavy oak desk in the center, and maps pinned across the back wall, crisscrossed with red string and faded ink. "This ain't just a ranch, is it?" she asked. Sam sat down behind the desk, leaned back, and watched her. "No, not just. Collect strays. I offer work shelter for folks that need a place to start over. Like us. Like a lot of people." She paced the room, finger trailing along the back of a worn leather chair. "So what's the catch?" "No catch. That's not how this works." "It is." Clara exhaled sharply. "You expect us to be grateful, obedient. I expect you to decide for yourselves." She looked at him, skeptical. "You spent $500 and some change to keep 3 strangers together. What do you expect in return?" Sam was quiet a moment. Then he said, "Help around the ranch. Rosa can cook. You can manage ledgers. Luz seems gentle with animals. Fair wages. Room and board. That's it." "And if we say no?" "No chains here." Clara didn't answer. Her chest felt tight, like someone had opened a door she'd spent years locking shut. "You look tired," Sam said. "Go rest. We'll talk again tomorrow." She hesitated at the door, turned back. "Why really did you do it?" His voice was quiet. "Because I've watched families get torn apart before. I didn't have the spine to stop it then. This time I did." Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she left. In the room Martha had prepared, Rosa was already brushing Luz's hair, the girl curled in bed like she hadn't slept in weeks. "What did he say?" "Not much," Clara murmured. "He's strange." "And—" Clara paused. They sat in silence a while. Luz stirred. "I don't want to leave." "You don't even know him," Clara said. "I don't, but this place smells like bread, and the bed's soft, and nobody's yelling." Clara swallowed. "That's not enough to trust a man." Luz rolled over. "Maybe. But I'd like to believe someone out there still means what they say." The words lingered like smoke in the dark. Clara sat at the window long after her sisters slept, staring into the night. Somewhere out there horses snorted, a coyote howled in the distance. And Sam Delgado stood alone in the yard, arms crossed, watching the stars. She watched him too, trying to read the man like a map. But all she saw was something even more dangerous than a gunman. Hope. Clara didn't trust him, but part of her wanted to. The morning broke pale and quiet, with a lavender haze still clinging to the low hills around La Esperanza. Clara woke to the smell of something frying in butter, and for one strange moment she didn't remember where she was. The sheets were clean, the air cool, Rosa's breathing slow and even beside her. Luz had kicked her blanket off in the night but was still curled up in the far cot, hugging a pillow. It almost felt like peace, until Clara sat up and remembered that nothing about their lives had ever come without a price. Downstairs, Martha was already moving through the kitchen with the kind of confidence that said she ran things, no matter what man's name was on the deed. She barely looked up when Clara entered, just handed her a plate of cornbread and eggs like she'd been doing it for years. "You'll want to eat before chores," Martha said. "The fence on the east line needs checking and Sam's waiting to walk you through the books." Clara asked. "You're a ledger girl, aren't you? He can read it in your spine. That stiff way you carry numbers behind your eyes." Clara blinked, not sure if she should be flattered or suspicious. Martha just smiled. "He sees things other people don't. It's why we're all still here." Clara ate fast, trying not to let the warmth of the food soften her instincts. She wasn't here to get comfortable. She was here to figure things out, what Sam Delgado wanted, what he really ran on this ranch, and whether she and her sisters were safe under his roof, or just parked in the eye of a storm. After breakfast, she stepped out onto the porch, where Sam was leaning against the post with a black coffee in one hand and his gaze on the hills beyond. "You sleep?" he asked. "Enough." "Walk me." Clara hesitated, then followed him across the yard toward a side building she hadn't noticed the day before. Inside was a cramped office space lined with shelves of ledgers, crates of receipts, and maps tacked to the walls like veins in a body. "This is where we keep the truth," Sam said, pulling out a chair for her. "Everything that moves in or out of this ranch goes through these books. Supplies, payroll, contacts." Clara sat, fingers trailing over the nearest ledger. The entries were meticulous: dates, names, delivery routes. Some names were familiar, others weren't ranch hands. She recognized the signs: people moved under different aliases, supply runs that didn't make commercial sense, false manifests. "This isn't just cattle," she murmured. "Nope. You're hiding people." "We're helping them disappear," Sam corrected. "Women running from men with badges and blood on their hands. Children no one came looking for. A few men, too. Ones that saw too much or said too little. And the law buys what it likes and turns blind when it's paid to. We don't bribe 'em, we avoid 'em. That's where you come in." "Me. You see details. You can keep this place clean, quiet, precise. That's worth more to me than any gun." Clara narrowed her eyes. "So I'd be your accountant." "My anchor," Sam said, "if you want the job." She didn't answer right away. Her hands itched to open those books, make sense of the coded entries and buried names. This was the kind of problem her brain knew how to solve. But it also meant stepping deeper into something she wasn't sure she believed in yet. She finally said, "If I do this, my sisters don't lift a finger unless they want to." "They won't. And I get to see everything." "You will." Clara nodded slowly. "Then we have a deal." "Good." He poured her a second cup of coffee and slid it across the desk. "Welcome to La Esperanza." That afternoon, Clara worked through half the ledgers, sorting inconsistencies and flagging anything that looked too risky. Rosa spent time in the kitchen with Martha, and Luz wandered the garden, brushing down one of the horses that had taken a liking to her. Later, just before dusk, Clara stepped outside to stretch her legs, and saw a man she hadn't noticed before standing near the forge by the barn, striking sparks off a blade. He was tall, lean, with sun-worn skin and eyes too sharp to belong to someone as casual as he looked. A traveling hat was pushed back on his head, and his shirt was rolled to the elbows. The air around him smelled like iron and tobacco. "You're the new Navarro," he said without looking up. "I am." He plunged the blade into water, steam hissing up. "Josiah Quinn. I build things, fix things, occasionally blow things up when diplomacy fails." She arched an eyebrow. "Friend of Sam's." More like a stray he never managed to shake off. "What's your job here, really?" "Courier, tinker, message smuggler. Sometimes I pretend to be a blacksmith so people underestimate me." Clara smiled despite her subtle. Josiah grinned. "You learning the books?" "Trying to." He wiped his hands and leaned against the workbench. "Then you should know, La Esperanza isn't just a ranch. It's a map made of people. Everyone here has been somewhere worse. Everyone here carries ghosts." Clara crossed her arms. "And what ghosts do you carry, Josiah?" He looked at her for a moment, eyes darker now. "Too many to count, but only one that still talks to me." Before she could ask more, Rosa appeared from the porch. "Dinner's up!" Josiah tipped his hat and returned to the forge without another word. At supper, the long table filled with warmth and stories. Martha teasing Luz about feeding the horses sugar cubes, Josiah trading barbs with Rosa, Sam mostly quiet but present. The girls didn't laugh exactly, but they relaxed, just a little. That night, Clara lay awake listening to the wind scrape the windows. She wasn't sure yet what she believed about this place, but she knew one thing. It ran like a system, and systems could be broken, but they could also be fortified. She just had to figure out what direction Sam Delgado was leaning. Sometime near midnight, she saw the light flicker on in the office again. A shadow moved inside Sam, back at the ledgers, poring over details alone. He didn't trust anyone fully. Neither did. But something about that made him human. And for now, that would have to be enough. La Esperanza saves people, Josiah said, sharpening a blade, but it also paints targets. The desert wind rose early that morning, carrying the bite of oncoming heat. Clara woke to the sound of Luz humming softly from the porch. Sitting cross-legged with a basket of apples in her lap, the girl had barely spoken during their first days at La Esperanza, but something in the quiet rhythm of ranch life seemed to be coaxing pieces of her back. Clara watched from the doorway for a moment before stepping out. "You're up early." Luz glanced up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I like it before it gets hot, feels cleaner." Clara sat beside her, took an apple from the basket. "You slept okay?" "Better than I have in weeks." They didn't say anything else for a while. The sun was still low, casting long shadows. Somewhere near the stables, Rosa's laugh echoed faintly. She was with Martha again, learning how to knead dough without cursing at it. A few ranch hands crossed the yard, nodding polite greetings as they passed. Josiah walked by too, whistling some tune only he seemed to know, a saddlebag slung over his shoulder. It was strange, Clara thought, how normal it all looked, almost suspiciously normal. But she'd lived long enough to know that peace like this didn't exist without a cost. After breakfast, she found Sam behind the barn, tossing feed into the chicken coop with precise, practiced movements. He acknowledged her with a nod but didn't speak until she did. "You ever get tired of pretending this place is just a ranch?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "Who says I'm pretending?" "You think no one's going to come knocking? That the people you help don't bring trouble with them?" "They do," he said, pausing. "But I'd rather deal with trouble than sleep knowing I did nothing." She watched him a moment longer, then turned to leave, but stopped when she spotted someone across the corral. A woman she hadn't seen before. Maybe 30, blonde, but her roots were dark, holding a small boy on her hip. She looked jumpy, clothes clean but old, like she'd packed in a hurry, eyes constantly scanning the yard like she expected it to collapse around her. Sam noticed Clara staring. "That's Rebecca. The boy's Thomas. Came in 2 weeks ago." "Running from a badge." "A marshal." "Sheriff," Sam said. "Turner from Las Cruces claims she's his wife." Clara felt her gut twist. "Is she?" She was, before he started putting her in the hospital every other month. And now, she's done running, but he isn't done chasing. Clara looked toward Rebecca again. The woman held her son too tight, like she knew she had hours, not days. "I thought this place was supposed to be hidden." "It is," Sam said, "but some men dig harder when they think something belongs to them." Rebecca caught them watching and immediately turned away, vanishing into the far cabin. Clara exhaled through her nose. "She's not going to last like that. She's all nerves." "I know. So what's your plan?" "I'm working on it." It wasn't the answer Clara wanted, but it was the one she expected. Later that day, while organizing inventory records in the supply shed, Clara found Luz crouched beside the chicken coop with Thomas. The little boy was holding out a palm full of feed, his face a mask of concentration. Luz smiled gently, guiding his hand so the chickens wouldn't peck too hard. Rebecca hovered a few yards away, stiff as a board. Clara said, approaching slowly. Rebecca flinched. "Sorry, he's not used to strangers. He seems okay with Luz." Rebecca nodded tightly. "She's kind." Clara studied her. Rebecca had the posture of someone who'd flinched too many times, shoulders always half raised, like bracing for a slap. "Does he know what's happening?" Clara asked quietly. Rebecca looked her hiding. "He doesn't ask why." No, just scared. She hesitated. Do you have children? Sisters. That's enough. Rebecca offered a small, brittle smile.
Yeah, that's enough.
Before Clara could say more, a horse galloped into the yard, Josiah returning from wherever he'd been. Dust coated his clothes and hat. His face was unreadable, but his eyes flicked toward Sam immediately. Clara followed the direction of his glance and saw Sam already moving across the yard, jaw tight. Something was wrong. Inside the study, the four of them gathered around the desk. Josiah pulled a folded letter from his coat and laid it flat. Came through a friend in Mesilla, he said. Turner's filed an official complaint. Claims a woman named Rebecca Dawes is being held against her will somewhere in Dodiana County. And he just happened to guess this county, Clara asked. Turner's not guessing, Josiah said. He's narrowing. Clara looked to Sam. You said we had time. I thought we did. So what now? Sailed slowly, now we prepare. Clara's stomach tightened. How close do you think he is? If he's got names, we're not far off from boots at the door. That night, Clara couldn't sleep, not with the weight of it pressing in. She stepped outside just before midnight and found Josiah at the porch rail, cleaning a revolver. He didn't look surprised to see her. You're thinking, he said. And then, she's not going to make it, you know. Rebecca. She's been running too long. She's breaking inside. Some people survive it, others just fade. I won't let that happen. Josiah turned to her. Then you'd better figure out how to buy her time. He slid the revolver back into its holster, then stood. La Esperanza is strong, but it's not invincible. Sooner or later, someone's gonna come knocking harder than we can hold. And what then? He looked her straight in the eye. Then we either scatter or we stand. Clara watched him walk into the dark, heart thudding. Tomorrow she'd speak with Sam again. They needed a plan. Because running wasn't going to work forever. Not for Rebecca. Not for any of them. You run from ghosts long enough, Sam told her, they start to look like you. The storm started with a letter. A real one this time, not rumor, not whispers passed through border towns, but a folded piece of paper delivered by a ranch hand just before sundown. The seal was broken, but the message was clear. Sheriff Turner had filed a motion with the district office in Mesilla, and he was riding north with deputies in tow. Rebecca's name was printed in bold ink. He'll be here in 3 days, maybe less, Josiah said, tossing the letter onto Sam's desk. He's coming in through the West Trail. Wants to make it official. Question everyone, reclaim what's his. Clara stood near the window, arms crossed, face like stone. We can't move her now. He's close enough to catch a shadow. Sam nodded grimly. We'll need a distraction. A fight? No, he said quickly. Too many innocents, and Turner'd love nothing more than to paint this place as hostile. Clara asked. We give him what he wants. Sam leaned forward. Access, smiles, hospitality. Clara frowned. You want to invite him in? He'll expect resistance. If we don't give it, we control the narrative. Josiah snorted. You're thinking a dinner party. Exactly. The room went silent. Clara shook her head. You're insane. But it buys Rebecca time. And what do we do with her in the meantime? She leaves the ranch tonight, quietly, goes east through the dry pass with Rosa. Martha's already packing supplies. Where does she go? Clara asked. La Porte, a friend of mine, has a wagon yard there. She can blend in until we send word. And if Turner arrives early, then we stall him, smile and pour whiskey. Clara turned back to the window. The sun was dropping below the ridge, casting long shadows across the hills. It's a bad plan. It's the only one we've got. By midnight, the plan was in motion. Rebecca, shaking but silent, kissed Thomas on the forehead before handing him to Luz. He's safe with you, she asked Clara one last time. Clara nodded. We'll protect him, no matter what. Rosa hugged her tight before climbing into the wagon seat beside her. Josiah took the reins, nodded to Sam, and disappeared into the canyon trail without a word. By dawn, the wagon would be 20 miles out, just a ghost in the dust. The next morning, La Esperanza began to shift. Sam cleaned his boots. Martha dusted shelves and laid fresh linens. Luz was tasked with keeping Thomas out of sight in the cellar, where they'd turned a storage space into a makeshift nursery. Clara moved through the house like a current of electricity, checking blinds, adjusting curtains, setting the table with hands that didn't shake even when her heart did. At noon arrived. He rode in at the head of 5 mounted men, all wearing tan badges and smirks that didn't reach their eyes. Turner dismounted with the kind of arrogance that made Clara's fists clench. He was taller than she expected, lean and pale. With dark, slicked-back hair and a jaw clenched too tight, he wore polished boots and a revolver that had probably never seen war, but more than likely had tasted cruelty. "Well," he said, tipping his hat to Sam, "ain't this the prettiest piece of dirt in the county?" "Welcome to La Esperanza," Sam replied evenly. "We were just about to sit for lunch." "Thought you might be expecting me." Word traveled. Turner's eyes slid toward Clara, lingered too long. "And who's this?" Clara didn't flinch. "Clara Navarro, I keep the books." "Well, Miss Navarro," he said, walking past her, "I hope they're as clean as the sheets around here." Sam gestured toward the porch. "You'll find the food better than the manners." The meal was tense, like playing cards with wolves. Turner talked too much, bragged about law, about order, about how the region was falling to pieces without men like him to hold the nails in place. His deputies chuckled on cue, shoveling food like they'd never had a real meal. Clara kept her face calm, her voice level, but every time Turner glanced her way, her stomach knotted. He was watching the house, listening, weighing everything. And then he asked the question. "I heard tell you had a woman and child here. Blonde, quiet, showed up not long ago. Heard she was a Dawes. That true?" Sam leaned back in his chair. "We have travelers, workers, not prisoners. Folks come and go." Turner grinned. "Well, if she's not here, you wouldn't mind me taking a look around, would you?" Sam shrugged. "Of course not. You're the law." He led them through the house, deliberately slow. Clara followed, guiding them through the stables, the pantry, the smokehouse. Luz stayed hidden. Thomas didn't make a sound. They found nothing. But Turner didn't leave. He lingered. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned bruised orange, Clara found Sam alone in the barn, cinching the saddle on his mare like he might ride into war. "He knows," she said quietly. "He suspects," Sam corrected. "Not the same thing. He's not going to leave empty-handed. He might if we keep playing calm. Or," Sam looked at her, eyes tired, "or he burns this place down out of spite." Clara exhaled, furious at how little she could do. "He's not just here for Rebecca. He's here to test the fences. To see how deep your roots go." "I know." They stood in silence, the weight of the moment sinking deeper. Finally, she asked, "Was it always like this for you?" "Not always," he said, "but long enough." Clara moved to the doorway, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I'll help you stall him tomorrow," she said, "but after that we need a real plan." "We will." As she walked back toward the house, the wind kicked up a sheet of dust behind her, sharp and dry. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Begun. And Clara was tired of playing defense. "If he finds her here," Clara whispered, "he'll burn this place to the ground." Morning arrived too still. No birdsong, no rustle of wind through the cottonwoods. Even the horses seemed to sense something was off, hooves shifting nervously in the dirt, ears twitching, breath heavy. La Esperanza had become a stage, and every living soul on it knew the show had begun. Inside the main house, Clara stood at the table tightening a worn silk ribbon around her hair. She wore her neatest dress, pressed the night before, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest casual grace, but nothing vulnerable. A pinch of rouge, a touch of powder. She hated it, but today appearance was strategy. Across the room, Rosa adjusted the silverware for the 5th time. "He's watching everything," she whispered, "even how we move." "Let him," Clara muttered. "He'll see what we want him to see." Luz sat by the hearth with Thomas on her lap, rocking gently, softly humming the lullaby their mother used to sing. Thomas clutched a carved wooden horse Josiah had whittled for him. His wide brown eyes stayed fixed on the window. Turner and his men had not left the ranch after supper the night before. They'd claimed they were tired, asked for cots in the barn, acted like it was all a friendly inconvenience, but it was control, occupation masked as manners. And now it was day 2, the day of deception, the day to outplay him. At 10 sharp, Sam stepped into the dining room dressed in his cleanest shirt, sleeves rolled, vest buttoned. His hair was slicked back and he'd shaved. He looked like a gentleman rancher, not the man who'd once run stolen names through the border or hidden women in the bellies of hay wagons. Clara raised an eyebrow. "You clean up nice?" "I'm always nice," Sam said deadpan. "Pity the sheriff doesn't think so. He'll get bored if he doesn't find what he wants today." Or angry. Sam paused, eyes locking with hers, then let him. Clara didn't ask if he had a gun under his vest. She already knew he did. The table was set, coffee brewed strong and cornbread sliced warm when Turner entered the house like he owned it. His boots left small dust trails on Martha's polished floorboards. His deputies followed, one pausing to inspect a family photo on the wall, another eyeing Rosa with a smirk she didn't return. Turner said, "Too loud, smells like comfort." Clara replied smoothly. They sat at the table, an odd blend of civility and threat. Conversation turned to ranching, then to border politics, then to the trouble with women on the run. Turner talked with his mouth half full, smiling too often, letting his men laugh too loud. Clara matched him word for word. Calm, polite, disarming. She told a story about a storm ruining half their fencing last spring, and how Luz had tried to rescue a panicked goat from a flooded ditch. "She nearly drowned for a goat," Clara said with a soft laugh. Turner chuckled. "Soft hearts like that don't last long out here." "No," Clara agreed, "but they're the ones worth protecting." He studied her, trying to decide if she was mocking him. She didn't blink. Midway through coffee, he leaned back and stretched. "Mind if I take another look around the property?" Clara smiled. "Not at all. I'll walk you myself." She caught Sam's eye as she rose, and he gave a slight nod. The plan was holding for now. They toured the barn first. Luz and Thomas were hidden beneath the floorboards in the storage cellar, a trapdoor covered by an old wool rug and 3 crates of canned peaches. Martha had laid out fresh hay in the stalls and doused the floor with vinegar to throw off any scent. Turner sniffed. "You run a tight ship." Clara corrected. They moved on to the cabins, then the smokehouse. Turner poked around, opening cupboards, knocking on walls like he expected something to fall open and confess. Clara never flinched. Then he turned suddenly. "What's that building behind the west fence?" "Storage, tools, old plow parts." "Show me." They walked toward it. The sun was climbing higher now, beating down hot on their backs. Clara felt sweat bead between her shoulders. Inside the shed, the light was dim. Tools hung in neat rows, rusty wheelbarrow in the corner. Turner stepped in, scanning like a predator. Paused. Clara followed his gaze to a set of small footprints in the dust, barefoot light. "Thomas." Her blood went cold. She spoke quickly. "That's Luz's. She likes to sneak in here and hide from work." Turner crouched. "Funny, these look smaller than hers." "She walks on her toes, always happy." Slowly, like a snake coiling. "You're quick with lies." She smiled faintly. "Only when I need to be." For a long moment the two of them stared at each other. Nothing moved, not the wind, not the dust. Then, just as quickly, he rose. "Maybe I misjudged." They walked back to the house in silence. At the porch, Turner stopped. "This place," he said, "it's got a scent to it." Clara tilted her head. "What kind?" "The kind where things go missing, where people vanish." She met his eyes. "Maybe they're just found." He stared at her long and hard. Then he tipped his hat and walked off. That night La Esperanza held its breath. Thomas slept soundly beside Loz. Rosa scrubbed the dishes in silence. Sam stood at the edge of the porch watching the stars. Clara joined him. "You think he believed us?" she asked. "No." "Then why didn't he push harder?" "Because he's waiting for us to slip." She looked up at him. "And will we?" He didn't answer right away, just sipped from a flask and whispered, "Only if we get tired of pretending." Clara sighed, watching the moon rise slow and round over the ridge. She didn't like pretending, but she liked losing even less. Inside, the fire crackled low. And outside, somewhere past the hills, a man like Turner counted down the days until the next move. "He didn't find her," Sam muttered, "but he'll be back with fire." The knock came just after dawn. Not the polite kind, not the curious kind. It was the kind of knock that said, "We're done asking." A closed fist against thick wood 3 times, loud, measured, final. Clara sat upright in bed before her eyes even opened. She knew. The house was still, but the tension moved like thunder under floorboards. Luz stirred beside her. Rosa's bed was already empty. By the time Clara reached the front room, Sam was already at the door, sleeves rolled, face unreadable. He opened it slowly. Turner stood on the porch, a paper in his hand. "Mornin'," the sheriff said, as if this were casual. Behind him 2 deputies flanked the steps with rifles slung low but ready. A third stayed near the horses, eyes on the barn. Sam didn't smile. "You're up early." "I figured I'd skip the coffee today," Turner said. "Came straight to business." He held up the paper. "Judge Grant from Mozilla gave me this, signed and sealed. Search warrant, full property access." Clara stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. "On what grounds?" Turner handed her the paper. "Obstruction, harboring fraud, take your pick." Sam took it from Clara, scanned it fast, then folded it carefully. "Will cooperate." Turner raised an eyebrow. No protest. "You have the law on your side," Sam said. "We're not the ones with something to hide." Turner muttered. "That's what they all say." The search started immediately. This time it was different. No more wandering glances or casual strolls. Now Turner's men tore into everything. Mattress seams were sliced open. Floorboards lifted. Hay Tauziah's forge overturned. Martha's kitchen was flipped. Drawers dumped, jars shattered. Rosa tried to help clean but was pushed back by a deputy with a smirk and a too tight grip. Clara stepped in, planting herself between them. "You touch my sister again," she said coolly, "and I swear to God, I'll end your career with 1 letter." The man hesitated, then he backed off. By noon they'd found nothing. But Turner wasn't done. "You know what I think?" he said, standing in the yard, sweat staining his collar. "I think she was here. But she's not now, and that means someone helped her move." Clara didn't respond. Turner looked at Sam. "You're not as clever as you think." "No," Sam said, "I'm smarter." Turner's eyes narrowed. "See, I don't like when people play games with me, especially not the kind who run ghost towns full of ghosts. You keep pushing, Delgado, and this ranch's luck will run dry." Sam said nothing. Turner turned to the house. "We'll be back tomorrow, with more." And then he left. Not in a rush. None. But in a kind of smoldering quiet that made Clara's stomach twist. Inside, the damage was worse than expected. Broken dishes, slashed linens, books ripped apart, Thomas's toy horse split in 2. Luz cried when she saw it. Josiah stood at the edge of the barn, arms crossed, jaw tight. "They're escalating," he said. "He's not looking anymore, he's provoking." Clara turned to Sam. "We can't do this again tomorrow. The next time he might bring a judge, or worse." "I know. So what's the plan?" Sam looked toward the canyon road. We end it before he can. How? He didn't answer right away. Then Rebecca needs to testify. Clara blinked. You want to bring her back? She's the only one who can break him legally. Sworn statement, names, incidents, the whole damn thing. She barely survived him. Clara said, you saw her, she was afraid to breathe. She doesn't have to come here. Just into the county, long enough to sign a deposition. Then we get it into the right hands. Who do you know who'll actually move on Turner? A retired judge. Owes me a favor. Clara paced. It's a risk. Everything's a risk now. Rosa entered the room then, holding a torn dish towel. If we're doing this, she said quietly, then we do it fast. Clara turned. You're on board. Rosa nodded. That boy lost his toy horse today. He didn't cry, he just stared at the pieces like it was his fault. I'm done waiting for someone to save us. They all turned to Luds. She looked up. Do we still have time? If we move tonight. The plan was simple on paper. Josiah would ride hard to La Porta, find Rebecca, and bring her to a safe house just outside county lines. Clara would draft the deposition and ride to meet Sam's contact the next morning. Everything depended on speed and silence. That night the ranch went dark early, no fires, no movement. Clara sat alone at the table, writing by candlelight. Her handwriting was steady, but her pulse was not. In the barn, Josiah checked his gear twice, then a third time. Before he mounted, Clara approached. If something goes wrong, she said, don't be a hero, just get her out. He looked at her. You worried about her? I'm worried about all of us. He climbed into the saddle. Then let's stop running. She watched him ride off into the night, dust curling around his silhouette like smoke. The silence afterward was thick. Back inside, Sam stared at the map on his wall. His finger traced a line from La Porta to Mozilla. His mouth moved like he was saying something to himself, but no sound came. Clara stood behind him. Even if we get the testimony, she said quietly, even if this judge listens, what's to stop Turner from coming back anyway? Sam's voice was low. If we get him stripped of his badge, he loses his power. Then we deal with him like any other man. Clara didn't ask what that meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to. But she knew this much: Turner was coming back, and next time it wouldn't be with paper. It would be with fire. We're done hiding, Clara whispered. Now we hit back with truth. The night was long, but the morning came fast. A hot wind pushed across the land as the sun crept up behind the eastern ridge, burning off the last of the night's calm. Clara stood on the porch with a satchel slung over her shoulder and the signed deposition tucked tightly inside it. Rebecca's written statement. 3 pages of ink and memory that could ruin a lawman's career, maybe even land him in prison. She'd read it twice, once as a witness, once as a woman. It was enough. Josiah hadn't returned yet, but his note had arrived at dawn, carried by a stable hand from a halfway post near La Porta. She signed. She's scared, but she signed. Stay sharp, eyes on the wind. Now it was Clara's turn. She adjusted her gloves, took one last look at the house, and nodded to Rosa, who stood at the gate holding a rifle beneath her shawl. Luz and Thomas were still inside, kept away from the tension building in the yard. Sam stepped beside Clara, reins in hand. You sure about this? He asked. No, she said, but I'm going anyway. You'll have to go around the canyon. Turner's patrols have eyes on the southern pass. I'll cut through Silver Ridge, less cover but faster. He hesitated. If something happens, then I burn the statement and keep riding. Sam gave a small nod. Jaw set. You ride alone. Safer that way. If they catch me, they'll assume I'm just a courier. Be back by dark, he said, or I come looking. She mounted her horse without another word, kicked her heels gently, and rode out toward the high trail. The dust rose behind her like a whispered warning. The road to Mesilla was not a road at all, just scrubland and brittle grass, dry creeks and jagged rocks. The trail narrowed near the ridgeline, where the land dropped off in hard shoulders and vultures circled high above. Clara rode steady, pushing hard through the morning heat. Every minute counted. By mid-morning, she'd crossed the halfway marker. An old wooden fence collapsed near a dry well, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. That was when she saw them. She didn't need a closer look to guess who sent them. Turner's men. Clara didn't panic. She kicked hard and veered off the trail, heading west into the low scrub. Her horse galloped hard, hooves pounding against dry dirt. Behind her, the riders shouted, too far to shoot but gaining. The land dipped and curved. Clara guided the mare toward a narrow ravine lined with mesquite trees, a natural choke point. She ducked low, angled between boulders, branches snapping at her arms. The ravine opened onto a wide washbed. On the other side was a hill, small, steep, and brutal in the heat. She pushed the horse. The mare strained, lungs heaving, but Clara didn't slow. The paper in her satchel slapped against her back like a heartbeat. She reached the top, pulled the reins hard, and slid behind a rocky outcrop. Then she waited. The riders appeared seconds later. She could hear them now, one young, one older. The younger one cursed every few words. The older one rode steady, methodical, like a man used to chasing ghosts. Clara reached into her coat, hand tightening on the pistol Sam had given her. The younger one spoke first. She's not stupid. She'll burn it before we catch her. The older man grunted. Then we bring her in and tell Turner we tried. A pause. What if she fight? Then she's not the girl we're after. She's just another outlaw. Clara exhaled slow, then she stood. Arms steady. I'm not the one you should be afraid of, she said. Both men jerked in surprise, reins pulling hard. You won't shoot, the older one said. Not before asking questions. I'm done asking, Clara replied, and fired into the dirt near his horse's feet. The animal reared, panicked. The rider barely kept his seat. Next shot won't miss, she said. Turn around, ride back. Tell your boss he's not the only one who knows how to play dirty. They didn't move. So she fired again, closer this time. The younger one turned. Screw this, he muttered, yanking his horse around. The older one hesitated, then followed. Clara didn't wait to see how far they rode. She turned back toward the high ridge, kicked her mare, and didn't stop until Masilla's outer marker came into view, just after noon. The town shimmered in the heat, dusty, sun-baked but bustling. She rode straight to the judge's home on the east end, a squat adobe building with red clay tiles and a creaky wood gate. She knocked hard. An old man opened the door, thin, white-bearded, wearing a vest with no shirt beneath. Judge Caleb Wynne. You're Sam's girl, he asked. Just his friend. Even better. She handed him the papers. He sat down at the desk, read in silence for 5 minutes. His hands were steady, eyes sharp. When he finished, he nodded once. This'll burn Turner to the bone, he said. But it's not enough to go straight to court. He's got half the county wrapped around his little finger. I make 2 copies, one for a federal contact I still trust, the other for a reporter in Santa Fe. And you? I'll file the paperwork from here. Official, quiet. Will it hold? If it doesn't, he said, he'll know he's being hunted. Clara watched him fold the statement into a fresh envelope. Make sure she stays anonymous. Use initials. No full names unless you have to. Smart. Clara stood. She deserves protection. Wynne gave her a long look. So do you. She left shortly after, riding back toward La Esperanza with the sun high and her limbs sore. Every ridge made her tense, every shadow a possible ambush, but no riders came, no shots. The wind. She arrived just before dusk. Sam was waiting at the gate, rifle slung, face pale with worry. When he saw her, the tension broke. You okay? He asked, helping her down. I'm fine, she said. They tried to stop me. You shoot? I scared them. He looked proud. Clara handed him the empty satchel. The judge is moving fast. You were right. He owes you something. Sam smiled, then looked toward the house. Inside, Rosa was lighting lanterns. Luz was singing again. Thomas was asleep on the couch, wooden horse glued back together. Clowered. Lit. Many more to come. I outran them today, Clara whispered to Sam, but this war's just getting started. The desert had a way of holding its breath. Even when the sky was wide open and the wind hummed across the flatland, there were moments when the air felt heavy with silence, like something was listening, watching. That's how La Esperanza felt the next morning. No riders approached, no dust clouds in the distance, no threats, not yet, but everyone knew it wouldn't last. Clara sat at the dining table, sharpening pencils. It was a pointless task, but her hands needed something to do. She'd sent a message to Josiah 2 nights ago with a plan, find out how Turner was reacting, if the rumors had reached Las Cruces yet. They hadn't heard back. She hated waiting. Sam stood at the front gate, eyes fixed on the trail, arms crossed over his chest. Rosa was in the cellar with Luz, going over evacuation routes in case everything went south. Martha kept the kitchen going like normal, because that's what strength looked like when you had no gun. I feel like we're living in the eye of a dust storm, Clara said aloud. Because we are. Right before noon, a rider appeared, not a threat, familiar hat, lazy seat in the saddle. Josiah. He didn't stop at the gate, rode straight into the yard and jumped off the horse before it fully stopped. Sweat soaked his shirt, dust in his teeth, eyes sharp. They know, he said. Turner's boiling. How? Judge Wynn leaked it, just enough. A story in the Santa Fe Herald broke last night. Nothing specific, but enough smoke for people to ask where the fire is. Sam stepped forward, and Turner went dark, too dark, cleared out of Las Cruces, took 2 of his own men and left the badge behind, says he's taking personal leave. That's not a retreat, Clara said. That's a hunt. Exactly, Josiah replied. He's not going through the law anymore. He's coming to finish it himself. Clara felt the knot in her gut tighten. How long? Could be hours, could be tomorrow, but it's happening, and when it does, he's not coming to talk. Sam nodded, jaw clenched. We need to get everyone ready. Clara moved quickly. She gathered Rosa, Luz, and Martha in the kitchen, told them to pack light, quiet, fast. Any documents, ledgers, letters, burn them if they couldn't carry them. Thomas clung to Luz's hand. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Where are we going? Rosa asked. There's a canyon shelter 6 miles east, Clara said. Josiah knows the way. If Turner comes, you take the boy and get out. Luz asked. Clara paused. I'm staying. Rosa's voice cracked. You'll get killed. I won't, Clara said. Not if this goes right. That afternoon, Sam gathered the hands. A few had left already, sensing danger on the wind. The rest listened closely. He didn't promise safety, just made it clear. If they stayed with eyes open. When dusk came, La Esperanza quieted. The women were packed. Martha kissed Clara on the forehead before climbing into the wagon with Thomas and Rosa. You're a damn fool, Martha said gently, but you're a brave one. Clara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Last. If we don't see you by sunup, he started. Then keep them safe, Clara finished. No looking back. They rode out just as the last light dipped behind the hills. Only Clara and Sam remained. They didn't speak much, just sat on the porch with loaded rifles and a bottle of bourbon between them. The stars came out, sharp and endless. You think he'll come tonight? Clara asked. Sam nodded. If I were him, I'd strike when the fear's thickest. She sipped. I'm not scared. You should be. She looked at him. Are you? He hesitated, only of losing what we built. They sat in silence. At midnight, the dogs barked. One long low howl from the far end of the ranch. 3, no more. Clara rose, rifle in hand. Sam followed. Turner didn't hide. He rode straight in, no badge, no backup, just a shotgun across his saddle and a sneer carved into his face. He dis low. Evenin', folks, he called. Beautiful night. Sam said nothing. Clara stepped forward. You're trespassing. He laughed. I'm not here for pleasantries. You're not a sheriff anymore, Sam said. You're just a man with a gun. And you're a liar with a bleeding heart. Turner shot back. You think these little stunts change the world? Clara said, but they might stop you. He stared at her for a long time, then stepped closer. I came for what's mine. Sam said. You think I care about her? Turner spat. She's just a bruise I never finished. I came for you. For every smug word, every time you thought you could steal something from me. You're not angry because you lost her. Clara said, you're angry because you couldn't break her. Turner's eyes darkened. You think this place makes you righteous? No, she said quietly, it makes us ready. He drew. The two men stood 10 feet apart, hands hovering, air burning. And then, a shot cracked through the night. Not Turner's. Clara. Turner staggered, his gun hit the ground. She didn't shoot to kill, just enough to rip through his thigh, drop him screaming into the dirt. Sam moved fast, kicking the shotgun away. Turner groaned, clutching his leg, cursing every breath. You came to end it, Clara said, lowering her weapon, so we did. They tied him up and left him in the barn with water and a warning, stay and you'll bleed out. Ride and you'll live. But you don't ever come back. By sunrise he was gone. They never saw him again. But the ranch never forgot. He didn't come for justice, Clara told Sam. He came for control, and he left with nothing. The morning after Turner's fall was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that meant peace. It was the quiet that comes after a storm, when the land holds its breath and the air is heavy with what still lingers. Clara stood at the edge of the porch, the same place where Turner had threatened to destroy everything they'd built. The blood was gone from the dirt now. Sam had washed it away before dawn, but the memory remained. Luz asked softly behind her. Clara turned, looked into the girl's wide, tired eyes. No, she said, but he is. They'd watched Turner ride out at first light, slumped in the saddle, bleeding and beaten. He hadn't said a word. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe the silence was all he had left. But Clara didn't believe in clean endings. Men like him didn't disappear. They festered, changed names, found new ground to poison. That's what scared her most. The rest of the ranch began to stir. Josiah returned with the women and Thomas just after sunrise. His face was lined from the ride, but his eyes searched Clara first, only relaxing when he saw her standing tall, whole. You still breathing? He asked. She said, but yes. Martha embraced her without a word. Rosa checked Luz's face, then Thomas's hands, then her own heart, all intact. La Esperanza. Sam called a meeting in the great room just past mid-morning. Everyone was there, ranch hands, women, the few children that had taken shelter over the years, even people who'd left before Turner came slinked back, drawn by the smell of change, of maybe being safe again. Clara stood beside Sam as he addressed them. I won't lie to you, he said, voice steady. We've shaken the ground. That man may be gone, but his kind isn't. What we did here, what we built, it stands for something now, and that means it'll draw fire. A murmur moved through the room. But it also means this place matters. Sam continued, and if we protect it, if we protect each other, then what we did wasn't just defense. It was the start of something better. Josiah crossed his arms. So what's the plan? We make it official, Sam said. No more hiding in shadows. We register this ranch as a sanctuary property. I've already spoken to Judge Wynn. He'll help us apply for federal oversight. Clara blinked. Won't that make us more visible? Yes, Sam said. But we'll have protection to match legal status, government acknowledgement, no more pretending. Rosa looked uncertain. And if they come anyway? Sam looked at Clara. She stepped forward. Then we face them as a community, not as runaways, not as ghosts. It wasn't applause that followed, but nods, tight, silent, honest. They were ready. The rest of the day passed in movement. Fences mended, doors replaced, ledgers rewritten. Clara began drafting paperwork with Rosa's help, going over land records and cross-checking names. Sam met with riders who'd agreed to carry word to nearby towns, offer work, shelter, stability to those who needed it. The ranch was changing. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Clara sat on the porch alone, staring out at the dark. Sam joined her eventually, 2 tin mugs in hand. He asked, "Is it terrible?" "Awful." She drank anyway. For a while neither said a word. Then she asked the question that had haunted her all day. "What if this place turns into exactly what we fought against?" Sam looked at her. "It won't." "How do you know?" "Because you won't let it." She let out a bitter laugh. "That's not much of a plan." "It's enough," he said. "You see people. You protect them not for show or reward, but because it's right. You gave Rebecca a voice. You gave Luz a home. You gave Turner a chance to walk away, and that's what broke him. Not the bullet, the choice." Clara stared out into the dark. "He wasn't ready for someone who didn't want to become him," she said. Sam agreed. He wasn't. She looked down at her hands. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" "Rebecca." Clara nodded. "Maybe. But she doesn't have to. What she gave us is already here." The porch creaked under them as the wind picked up. Somewhere in the barn a horse whinnied. In the far distance coyotes howled. Sam rose. "You should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we start building for real." She didn't move. He turned to go, then paused. "You said something once," he said, "that this place makes us ready." She looked up. "You were right. But now we have to make it more than that. It has to be a place that makes others ready too. Ready to live." He left her with that. Clara stayed on the porch until the moon was high and the wind turned cold. She thought about everything that had led them here. The auctions, the violence, the escape, the hiding. Every mile of it had carved something into her bones. But maybe, just maybe, they were finally carving back. When she finally went inside, she stopped to check on Luz and Thomas. The girl was asleep with a book on her chest. Thomas lay curled beside her, holding the mended wooden horse. Clara touched the doorframe lightly. She wouldn't forget what Turner had tried to do. But she wouldn't let it define them either. La Esperanza was more than its scars. It was a beginning. "We didn't just survive him," Clara whispered to herself. "We outlived him." The first letter arrived in early spring, carried in the beak of a dust-covered post rider whose eyes didn't quite meet Clara's when he handed it over. No return address, no seal. Just her name written in looping script across the front. Miss Clara Navarro. She stood on the porch, holding it for a long moment before slipping it into her apron. Didn't read it right away. Didn't need to. The weight of it told her everything. It was from the outside, from a world that hadn't quite given up on La Esperanza, or perhaps hadn't forgiven it. 2 hours later, when the kitchen had quieted and Rosa had gone to settle Thomas for his nap, Clara unfolded the letter behind closed doors. It was from a woman named Evelyn Ross, writing from a small settlement outside of Sierra Blanca. She didn't waste time on pleasantries, just told the truth. "I heard what you did," it began. "The girl, the sheriff, the trial. People are talking. Not loud, not all good, but enough." Evelyn explained that she'd taken in 3 girls, runaways. 2 were pregnant. 1 had bruises that hadn't yet faded. She'd hidden them for weeks, but word was spreading. Men were asking questions. Threats were tightening like belts. "I don't know what you are," the letter finished. "But if you're real, If what they say about that ranch is true, then help me. Read it twice, then a third time. By nightfall she was in the barn with Sam and Josiah, the letter open on the work table between them. It's not just us anymore, she said. Josiah ran a hand through his beard. Could be bait. It could be, Sam agreed, or it could be someone desperate. Clara leaned forward. When Turner was bleeding out in our dirt, I told him something. We're not ghosts. That means we don't just survive in silence. We speak, we move, we take people in. Sam sighed. We haven't even secured the charter. The land claim paperwork's still caught up in Mozilla. Clara looked him dead in the eyes. If we wait for every document to arrive, someone else dies. That was the end of that. The plan came together fast. And Josiah and Rosa would ride out under cover of dusk, heading southeast with supplies and safe house contacts. They'd reach Evelyn by week's end. If the story checked out, they'd bring the women back to La Esperanza. It wouldn't be the first time, but it would be the first time after Turner, and that meant new dangers. More. The next morning before Josiah and Rosa left, Clara pulled them aside. If you run into trouble, don't wait for permission to fight. Just get them safe. We know the rules. Clara pressed the letter into her hand. Give her this back. Let her know we're real. Josiah mounted first. Rosa climbed up behind him. They rode out without ceremony, dust rising behind them like a quiet promise. In their absence, Clara threw herself into preparation. They repainted the bunkhouse, built a second shed for tools, planted a new row of corn behind the old chicken coop. She found herself scribbling plans in the margins of ledgers. Blueprints for things that didn't exist yet. Another cabin, a communal bathhouse, a schoolhouse maybe. Lowe's watched her work one evening and finally said, "You're building a town." Clara paused. Then, after a moment, "Yes, I guess I am." Sam noticed it too. One night as they sat on the porch, he held out a folded sheet of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Blueprints for expansion, lodging for families, maybe a doctor's shack if we ever get one." Clara opened it. The handwriting was neat, precise, and oddly hopeful. "You really think it'll grow that big?" He shrugged. "It already has. Just hasn't caught up with itself yet." Clara smiled. That's a good problem to have. They shared a quiet moment, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. Then came the second letter. This time addressed to Mr. Samuel Delgado. Sam read it once, handed it to Clara without a word. The handwriting was blocky, formal. The seal was from a federal clerk's office in Santa Fe. The United States Marshal Service has opened a formal review of Sheriff Aaron Turner's record. Your deposition, along with the notarized testimony submitted under alias RD, has been accepted into evidence. Pending final authorization, your property, La Esperanza, will be granted provisional protection under the Safe Harbor Expansion Act. Clara blinked. This is happening. It's real now. They didn't celebrate, just sat with it. The wait. The change. 2 days later, Josiah returned. But only Clara met him at the gate, her breath catching. "They're okay," he said quickly. "Rosa and the women. They're hiding in a box canyon south of Sierra Blanca. Trouble caught wind of them, though. 2 bounty hunters. One might have been a deputy from Turner's old crew." "Rosa." "She's holding firm. Told me to come ahead and ask, can we send a wagon?" Clara didn't hesitate.
"Yes."
"But if you do," Josiah said, "you're telling the world we're open." Clara looked toward the house, toward Luz sweeping the porch, Thomas feeding chickens, Sam tightening a fence line under the setting sun. "We already are." Sam joined her as she wrote a reply to Rosa, his hands resting on the back of her chair. "You scared?" he asked. "Eden." "Yeah." He waited. "But we do it anyway." She folded the paper, sealed it. "Because if we only help when it's safe," she whispered, "then we don't really help at all." "We're not a secret anymore," she said aloud. "We're a promise." The wagon creaked beneath the weight of its passengers, 2 young women and one barely more than a girl. Dust clung to their faces, and their hands trembled even when they weren't moving. Rosa sat beside them, one hand on the reins, the other resting gently atop a shotgun wrapped in cloth on her lap. Her eyes scanned every ridge, every shadow. She'd taken the long route home, skirting known trails and water stops. Trust had to be earned slowly, especially from those who had run too long. The one named Elise hadn't spoken since they'd left Sierra Blanca. The youngest, Mira, stared into the distance like she was still looking for danger behind every cactus. And Maeve, the one who'd written to Clara, just kept whispering under her breath like a prayer or a curse. Rosa didn't ask questions. She just drove. At sundown on the 3rd day, the outline of La Esperanza appeared on the horizon like a promise that might not hold. Back at the ranch, Clara stood at the gate with Sam and Luz. She didn't speak until the wagon rolled close enough for her to see their eyes, tired, hollow, but not broken. That mattered. Rosa climbed down first and walked straight into Clara's arms, no words, just relief. "She did it," Sam whispered. Clara answered. The 3 women stepped down from the wagon one by one, unsure of where to go or what to do. Thomas peeked from behind the doorframe, clutching his wooden horse. Clara approached slowly. "Welcome to La Esperanza," she said gently. "You're safe here." Maeve stared at her. "How do you know that?" Clara didn't hesitate. "Because we already survived the worst of them." That night dinner was quiet. The newcomers ate in small, slow bites, their eyes darting at the sound of every footstep or creaking floorboard. Rosa sat with them, her presence a buffer. Luz brought extra blankets and laid them gently at their feet. No one asked for stories, no one demanded answers. But in the quiet a bond began to form. Later, as the others slept, Clara and Sam sat on the porch again. "Time," Sam said. Clara replied. Sam leaned back, boots on the railing. "We've changed." "How so?" "When this started, we were just trying to stay hidden. Now, we're visible. They'll come, with papers or bullets. Then we stay ready." Past. The 3 women began to settle into rhythms, small ones but meaningful. Mira followed Luz around like a shadow, learning how to gather eggs and slice bread without cutting herself. Maeve spent time with Josiah at the forge, hammering out rusted tools in silence. Elise still didn't speak, but she started tending the garden with Martha, her hands surprisingly gentle. Then the stranger arrived. He rode in one morning alone, no dust cloud, no urgency. Just a man on a pale horse wearing a neutral expression and carrying a thick satchel strapped tight to his back. Clara met him halfway up the path. "You're on private land," she said. "I know." "You law." He pulled out a badge, Marshal's office, Santa Fe, real. Clara glanced at Sam, who'd already stepped onto the porch with a hand near his belt. "I'm not here for trouble," the man said. "Name's David Lorne. I work out of Judge Wynn's circuit." "What do you want?" "And papers." He unstrapped the satchel and handed Clara a sealed packet. Inside, confirmation of federal recognition. La Esperanza was now officially registered as a safe harbor property under provisional law. That meant protection, oversight, the right to house, feed, and defend the vulnerable without interference. Clara stared at the papers, her hands shook. Lorne continued, "You'll need to submit yearly records. Land use, residency aid logs, and you'll need to name someone as legal head of operations." Clara looked up. "That's me." "Then sign." She did. The pen felt heavier than any gun she'd ever carried. When it was done, Lorne gave a small smile. "Word of advice," he said. "This place will become a target and a refuge at the same time. You'll draw good and bad in equal measure." Clara said. Lorne mounted up again. "One more thing," he said, pausing. "There's a family coming from Fort Stanton. Widow and 3 kids, they're walking. Been 2 weeks already. If you still mean what you signed, send someone to meet them." We will. After he left, she stood in the yard for a long time, holding the papers, wind tugging at the edges. Rosa. What now? She asked. Clara looked toward the hills. They began that afternoon. Josiah and Sam started cutting timber from the North Grove. Rosa marked plots for 3 new cabins. Luz drafted a schedule for community meals and school lessons. Clara spent the next 3 days writing letters, calls for help, offers of shelter, updates to Judge Wynn. The women who had arrived from Sierra Blanca started to speak. Maeve told Luz about the preacher who locked them in a root cellar for weeks. Mira admitted she hadn't seen her brother in over a year. Elise still didn't say much, but one night she brought Clara a handful of marigolds and placed them gently on the table. "Clara smike you." Elise didn't reply. She didn't have to. By the end of the month, La Esperanza looked different. Louder, fuller. No longer a hiding place. A home. And one evening, just as the sun dropped low and the sky burned orange, Clara stood outside and whispered the words that had been building in her chest since the moment she opened that first letter. We're not just surviving anymore, we're becoming. It started with the sound of hooves, not the slow, solitary rhythm of a traveler, but urgency, speed, a warning. Clara was in the barn mending a harness strap when Luz burst in, cheeks flushed. Riders, 4 of them, coming fast from the south road. Clara dropped the leather and moved, boots hitting the dirt hard. By the time she reached the front gate, Sam and Josiah were already there, rifles in hand but lowered. The riders came into view moments later, covered in dust. One of them, an older man with a limp, waved a white cloth, not a surrender, a plea. They pulled up hard just outside the gate. "We're not looking for trouble," the man called out. "We're looking for help." Clara stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "What happened?" "It's the Ramirez family, the widow and her kids. You sent word to meet them, remember?" Sharply, "Yes." "They didn't make it. They were ambushed halfway through the flats, just east of Dry Creek." Sam tempered. The rider nodded. "We saw the wagon, burned out, no bodies, just blood and scattered tracks, looked like someone took them." Silence fell like a stone. Clara's throat tightened. "How long ago?" "This morning, maybe 4 or 5 hours. We rode as fast as we could." Josiah swore under his breath. Sam turned to Clara. "We can still catch them." She nodded. "Gear up now." They moved fast. Sam, Josiah, and Clara rode out within 10 minutes, taking only what they needed: rifles, canteens, rope. Rosa stayed behind to keep La Esperanza steady. Luz tried to argue, but Clara looked her in the eye and said, "We need someone to bring them back safe. That's you." The trail was easy to follow. Brop's wheel ruts. But what disturbed Clara most were the small footprints, tiny, chaotic, desperate. Children's feet running through the sand. They found the burned wagon by sundown. It was still smoldering. Josiah jumped down first, searching for signs. They took them east, toward the old silver mine. Clara's heart dropped. "You're sure?" He pointed to a scrap of fabric, child's shawl caught on a jagged rock. "That path leads nowhere else." They followed. The sun dropped fast behind the hills, leaving a blue haze that settled like fog. By the time they reached the canyon pass, the air had grown cold and sharp. Abandoned since the war, known mostly for cave-ins and ghost stories. But it made sense, remote, defensible, cruel. They stopped just outside a narrow entrance. Voices echoed faintly from within, men low and confident. Josiah dropped to a crouch, 4, maybe 5 inside. Clara looked at Sam. "What do you think?" He met her gaze. "We go quiet, fast. You and Josiah circle left, I'll draw them." Clara shook her head. "No." "I'm a distraction," he corrected. "You've got the steadier hand." She didn't argue. There wasn't time. They moved into position. Sam crept toward the front, whistling low and steady, just enough to pull attention. Inside, the voices stopped. Then came the curse, a heavy boot. 2 men came out, rifles drawn, eyes scanning. That's when Clara and Josiah struck. One shot cracked, then a second. Both men dropped. Inside, the others shouted, scrambling. Josiah lunged through the opening, Clara right behind him. Inside, the mine stank of sweat and rot. Oil lamps flickered along makeshift shelves. Tied in the corner were the Ramirez children, 2 girls and a boy no older than Thomas. Their mother, bloodied but alive, lay behind them. A man turned with a blade in hand, shouting, "Back off!" Clara didn't flinch, let them go. He lunged. His body hit the dirt hard, the blade clattering beside him. Josiah freed the children, cutting ropes quickly. The widow sobbed, clinging to her kids as if they might disappear again. Sam entered last, breath heavy, rifle up. "It's done." Clara nodded. But her voice was low, "Not yet." They searched the cave, found the last man hiding behind a pile of crates. Josiah dragged him into the open. "Who are you working for?" Sam growled. The man spat blood. "You think this place scares people? You think helping strays makes you heroes? Folks out there, they don't want sanctuaries. They want silence." Clara stepped forward. "We're not asking." She nodded to Josh. The man didn't speak again. By the time they returned to La Esperanza, dawn was breaking. The sky was a deep pink and the world felt older somehow. Rosa and Lowe's ran to greet them, tears streaming when they saw the children alive. The widow collapsed into Martha's arms. Josiah handed Clara a flask, and for once she drank without hesitation. Later, once the sun was high, Clara sat with Sam beneath the porch overhang, watching the children sleep near the front steps. "We have enemies," she said. Sam nodded. "We knew we would." "They're not afraid to kill." He agreed, "but they should be." She looked down at her hands, still marked with dried blood, dust in every crease. "I used to think this place was a refuge," she whispered. "N." She shook her head. "It's more than that now. It's a line in the sand." Sam reached over, rested his hand over hers. "And we hold it," he said, "no matter who comes." She didn't cry, not yet. But something in her broke open that night, and from that crack came clarity. Clara said, "It's sharp, and it cuts back." The morning was cool, unusually so for late spring, and the wind carried the scent of rain. Clara stood on the ridge just north of the ranch, the fields of La Esperanza sprawling beneath her. Rows of new cabins dotted the land now, some half-built, others already bustling with voices and life. Children chased chickens near the cookhouse. Smoke curled from the chimney in the blacksmith shed where Josiah worked with 2 new boys learning the trade. Rosa was stringing laundry between 2 mesquite posts, humming a song Clara didn't recognize. Below her, the land breathed. And so, it had been 2 months since the Ramirez rescue. 2 months of long days, sore hands, and nights too full of worry to sleep easy. But La Esperanza had endured, grown. More families had arrived, women with scars, men without homes, a blind veteran from Missouri. A pair of sisters who spoke no English but worked harder than anyone Clara had ever known. Each one carried something heavy. Each one found a place to set it down. Clara pulled her shawl tighter and stepped back from the edge. She walked toward the chapel, just finished last week, with its uneven walls and crooked cross. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, built with sweat and patience and nails hammered by untrained hands. Sam was there already, sitting alone on the steps, sipping coffee from a tin cup and watching the sun rise. "You're up early," Clara said. He smiled. "You're up earlier." She sat beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Sam broke the silence. "Judge Wynn sent word. The charter's finalized. We're legal across all state lines. They're even recognizing our land claim. No more disputes." Clara nodded slowly. "That's good." He also said folks from Santa Fe are coming. Journalists, a photographer. She sighed. "That's less good." "You don't want people to know." "I want them to know the truth," she said. "But stories get twisted. They'll call this a miracle. They'll make it sound clean." Sam nodded, and it wasn't. Clara said it still isn't. They sat for a few more minutes, letting the wind talk around them. Sam turned to her. Do you ever regret it? What, staying fighting? Becoming this, he said, gesturing to the land, the homes, the people. Clara didn't answer right away. She thought of the auction block, the way Grace's fingers had slipped from hers, the hollow pit of the early days, Rebecca's bruises, Turner's threats, the children who arrived in silence and slowly began to laugh again. I don't regret any of it, she said, but I carry all of it. He looked at her quiet and steady. So do I. From the porch of the nearest cabin, Thomas waved. Luz stood behind him smiling. She was taller now, stronger. Clara could see it in her shoulders, in the way she held the boy without flinching. Luz is asking about school again, Clara said. Says she wants to teach. She'd be good at it. Eden. She leaned her head back against the wooden beam. You remember what Turner said? That people don't want sanctuaries, they want silence. I remember. He was right about one thing. Sam raised an eyebrow. Sanctuaries scare people, Clara said, because they prove the world could be better if we just chose differently. He let out a quiet breath. You ever gonna write all this down? Clara looked toward the horizon. Someday. Why wait? Because right now it's still being written. At midday the bell rang, not for trouble but for lunch. Clara walked with Sam down the slope toward the gathering tables, where bowls of beans and cornbread were already being passed around. Maeve laughed at something Josiah said. Elise sat with Martha sewing. Mira helped Rosa pour water into tin cups. It didn't look like a victory. It looked like a life. Clara sat beside Luz, who leaned into her shoulder for just a moment before pulling away to wipe Thomas's mouth with a napkin. No guards, no guns drawn, no fear in the children's eyes. Just people. Living. Healing. She stood and tapped her cub gently with a spoon. The noise caught their attention. Everyone, she said, voice carrying just enough. I just want to say thank you. Not for being here, but for staying, for building, for showing up even when it was hard. Heads nodded, eyes misted. This place isn't perfect, she continued. We've lost things, we've buried names, but we've also planted roots, and I think that matters more. A silence fell, not heavy but full. Then Maeve raised her cup. To hope, she said. Others followed. To hope. Later that night, Clara walked the perimeter as she often did. She paused at the original gate, the one that once kept people out. Now it stayed open. She thought of Grace, Gabriella, Georgina. Of all the women who hadn't made it here, of the ones who had. And as the stars came out, soft and endless above her, Clara Navarro whispered to the dark. This isn't the end of our story. It's the start of someone else's. And the wind, warm and sure, carried her promise forward.